Hey guys, Genesis lesson number 3 this week. We're skipping ahead to Genesis chapter 6. So we're going to be talking about the flood. And our big question this week is, why did God flood the earth? And how do we get peace about that as Christians and believers? It's a lot more controversial of a story than is presented to us when we're kids. And so diving into how we come to terms with that, if we can have a decent defense, that'd be great. I'll present just a couple really quick um, defenses, reasonings behind why God flooded the earth. Nothing super groundbreaking, I don't think, but more than God flooded the earth because people were sinful and it was wicked. And God created us and He's just, so He can do what He wants. Just a little bit. Can we get a deeper answer than that? So that's what we'll be covering. I'm going to try to run through these questions as quick as possible. Respect you guys' time. Question number 1 is just the so what question in response to the lesson. Why does this matter? How should this impact my life? And the main takeaway we want to have probably from the flood narrative is looking forward to when God will judge the world at the end of time, and just having urgency to share the gospel. Everyone deserves to hear that message, to have a chance to respond. There's a lot of people that don't have that chance, and so we need some fire, some urgency to go and share. Second question is there are some other accounts in ancient literature that are similar to the Bible's narrative on the flood. So there are a couple of different ancient pieces of writing that talk about this global flood. And they're somewhat similar, somewhat different. A lot of times it's a deity that flooded the earth. And so the question is, and you want to let them sit and kind of chew on this for a minute. Don't just feed them the answer, because I think you could look at it from several different perspectives. Do you think that is favorable for Christianity and for the truth of the flood narrative, or is it unfavorable? Right? Does that help us believe that the Bible's account of the flood is real, or does that make it less likely that the story of the flood is real, that there are other accounts that are somewhat similar from around the same time period? Again, let them sit, think on that for a minute, but I think you do want to get across that if God really flooded the entire earth, that's a pretty major event, and we would expect multiple accounts of that, multiple people to write about that story, especially as Noah and his family kind of spread out, and that account gets shared orally, and kind of like a game of telephone, maybe gets twisted in different ways. But we should expect, a couple of different accounts of that big of an event would not be weird. It would be more weird if the Bible were the only place to say that happened. So there's that aspect. Question number 3. At the beginning of our time, I'll show this tweet about someone really criticizing God heavily for flooding the earth. And then just in response, after hearing that tweet and then hearing the lesson, how do they think they would respond to someone that challenged God, challenged Christianity in that way, if they were in a conversation with them? And so this is another one. Let them sit, let them think. What can we say back to that person? How would we handle that situation? There will be a lot of different responses to that. I've given you a couple. I think you do want to make sure you hit on letter C there, Matthew 7:6. It's that passage that talks about not throwing your pearls before swine or before dogs, because they'll just step on them. And this is this idea that some people are not going to be swayed, and they're not looking to have a good conversation. They're just looking to fight and agitate. And if we realize that's who we're talking to, we really want to hold on to the treasure that we have in Christ. We don't want to just cast that before them and let them step and trample on that. It's best that we just kind of exit out of those conversations as quick as we can. It's not really beneficial for either side, so we do want to put that in there. But there are some people that are just curious, and this is a stumbling block, and we want to be able to engage them in good conversation. Question number 4 hints at the very beginning of the lesson, before the lesson, I'm going to hit on 2 kind of observations that I've made, and some feedback that I've gotten the past couple weeks that is not good or bad, but just clarifying what we're doing, what our goal is, why we're doing things the way we do it. So one of them, this one is more for the high schoolers that we got last week of, I've already heard this, I already believe this, I already know this. And so I'm just going to break down this principle that's thoroughly impacted me, that in my teaching and in evaluating my life as a follower of Christ, is that we behave and act according to what we believe, what we truly believe. And so what that means is, we all say that we believe in gravity, and there's good reason to trust that we really do believe that, because that's how we live. We don't just jump off of tall buildings and not expect to fall. When we throw something up in the air, we expect it to come back down. Our actions are in accord with what we say we believe, and that applies to everything in life. But a lot of times we try to make that not apply for Christianity, that we can say that we believe something and that doesn't necessarily have to accord with how we behave. And we just are in continual need, like the person that Jesus was talking with, the Father, in Mark, when he said, I believe, help my unbelief. That's what he told Jesus. I believe, but help me in my unbelief. And that's where we all are, and where we will always be, that we, in some sense, we believe, but there's this big gap of unbelief where we need increased faith, increased belief in the basic principles of Christianity. And so we are trying to teach in a different way that, is not just a reiteration of children's ministry. So it should be new topics, new things, but we are going to hit on similar biblical principles often. And it's not because you don't know them. It's because we need to be reminded. We need to try to press further in for those to actually become realities, things that we truly, truly believe. And then the action will follow that if we really do believe it. So that's what question 4 is about, and then it's just applying it to this story. So are there some things in Noah's story in particular that we say we believe, we've said we believe since we were 4 and we heard this story, but we may not actually live out. And that's going to circle back to this idea that God judged the world in the flood. He's going to judge the world in the future. We all recognize that, say that we believe that, but our actions don't often accord with that. There's not much urgency to share the gospel with even our neighbors and our friends, and much less people all around the world. Question 5 can kind of be slotted into question 4 at some point, as it's just kind of comparing Noah's situation with ours. God comes to Noah, gives him a huge task to build the ark, and naturally Noah does not just sit around and say, okay, I'm going to do that, but I'll do it later. Or maybe somebody else can do that. I know that's important, but can somebody else do that? I'll do something else. Maybe I'll just gather the animals. Similarly, we have this huge task as believers to reach all the nations, all the people groups with the gospel. But our mindset is often, I can do that later. Somebody else can go and do that. And we just have this huge task that we put off or shove onto different people rather than doing it ourselves. And that's, again, just revealing this lack of faith, lack of belief in that reality that we want to get rid of. So that's what 4 and 5 are about. Question 6 and 7 is also going to hit on the other piece of feedback and observation I've gotten the last 2 weeks, which is we're having a hard time. I think this is all groups having a hard time. The students are not really engaging in doubt and speculation and the difficult questions that we're trying to pose. Like, God created the world for his glory. And I think every group, the feedback that I got was the students understood that, but none of them saw any problem with it. It didn't bother them whatsoever, which in one sense is good. We don't want a youth group full of people that are teeter-tottering on their way to abandoning the faith. But in the other sense, we do want them to be honest with themselves. We do want them to think critically. That's what we're trying to do with asking these big questions, is eventually either they will start thinking critically themselves of Christianity, or someone else is going to do that for them, whether that be a classmate or a college professor or a friend after they graduate, are going to start asking these difficult questions and really pressing in. Can you really defend this? Do you really have an answer for this? Or they'll start doing it in their own mind, or both. And what I want to happen while we're teaching this way is because I want that to happen now. While they're here in youth group, we're going to handle these difficult questions. It's okay for you to have doubts and questions, and when you do, don't push them off to the side. Let's engage those, because we trust Scripture. We trust that the Bible is true, Christianity is true, and so we're not afraid of the difficult questions that we might have. We want to press in and try to answer those, and so that's what questions 6 and 7 are getting at, if you have time to get there. Again, don't feel pressured to get through all of them ever. But we are going to try to be more strict on our schedule Sunday morning. We do need to give you guys more time and discussion, so we're making efforts to do that. But let me know if you have any questions this week. Praying for you guys, and I hope to see you Saturday and then Sunday.